When you place a wager with William Hill Sportsbook, every sports moment becomes even more interesting. And we have a special offer to help you bet on all your favorite sports risk-free. Download the William Hill mobile app, and when you sign up, you can get started with a risk-free bet of up to $500. Use promo code RADIORF. Must be present in New Jersey. 21 plus only. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 800gambler.org. Let's make it interesting with William Hill Sportsbook.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, this is Jennie Walker, and welcome to Closet Conversations. Today I want to talk to you about sourcing strategies, whether you're sourcing to sell on Poshmark, eBay, to sell at vintage shows or flea markets, or working with stylists, costume designers. It's different for each of these groups, and I want to talk about why and why I am thinking about it tonight as I record this podcast. So here I was tonight. I was running around the local Goodwill, and I was looking for things to source, and I source everywhere: Goodwill, Salvation Army, thrift shops, online, Real, Bestiaire Collective, consignment shops, clearance racks, outlet malls, you name it, full price for rare items. I mean, I source everywhere, and it's an absolute thrill to be able to shop for a living and then find beautiful things. So what I'm thinking about today is I was going around the Goodwill, and I realized what I was seeing all this stuff, and I was, picking out the things that draw my eye, and, I picked out some vintage, like true vintage. I picked out some modern, trendy things, and I picked out, a range of things, and I just was looking at that, and I'm going, this is really interesting, because here is this vintage red and white plaid snap front 1970s Western style top, which is amazing, just amazing. And it's right next to a black lace asymmetrical millie skirt. And then it's right next to a Reformation black midi length skirt buttons down the front. Those are just three of the many things that I had in my buggy. And I'm like, these are all completely different audiences. They're for different purposes. And so I wanted to talk about it. And on top of that, I'm going to be announcing in a different podcast about someone that I have styled for a major red carpet event with a super rare piece of high-end vintage, museum quality vintage that I purchased online, and big celebrities have worn this same dress, not my dress, but like when they make them, they make a whole run of them. And, and I'm like, this is happening. It's going to be announced shortly. And yet here I am, wandering around the Goodwill, schlepping my things and pulling out just all this stuff. And I was thinking to myself, what is wrong with this picture, right? And the picture is so strange because I have all these different experiences in finding amazing pieces, right? The in-store experience is completely different than sourcing online, right, where you don't get a chance to, touch and feel and examine the carpet. And because of coronavirus and because we've all been sheltered in, and I haven't had a chance to really go out the way I might normally do at, say, the outlet mall or into other consignment shops, which is absolutely my favorite, by the way, actually other consignment shops. I haven't had a chance to do that, so I've been limited to what's local, and locally I have two Goodwills in Pasadena that I go to. I go to an Out of the Closet. There's a new something that opened up called Revival Thrift. There's something called Huntington Collection. I used to go to Salvation Army because every time I would go, I would never find anything. I don't go anymore. But, I have these local thrifts here. What I don't have are local consignment shops to go to because, one, I own my own, and it's weird when you go into someone else's, I'll be honest. So when I go to consignment shops, it's always when I'm out of town, even if it's in Santa Monica or L.A. or where someone doesn't know me, that's when I feel like I can be relaxed. But it's just such different experiences. And part of one of the things I'm struggling with is I'm trying to ask myself, should I just focus on one thing? Should I only do couture vintage? Should I only do very sellable things that sell quickly, like on a Poshmark, that are super trendy? Should I only do non-designer vintage? You know, what should I do? Is it a good thing to be so spread out? Is it a bad thing? And I wrestle with this because it's all good, right? And it's all selling, and it all has a purpose, and it's all able to be recycled and put back into the world, which is all part of being sustainable. It's a completely different feel to it. And sometimes when I am wandering around Goodwill or I'm at the Goodwill bins, I just feel like I'm on a very strange side of this whole sustainability question. And it's a very different side of the issue than when I am sourcing some couture vintage museum quality gown that could be in an exhibit, right? But it's all the same, but different, right? And so what I've been struggling with lately is how do I spend more time on a higher end side of this thing, meaning working with more beautiful things, feeling like I'm really discovering something super rare and actually getting it out there, not only just to resell it for everyday wear, but something that's going to be photographed and archived and looked at and appreciated in a really big way, like when it gets on the red carpet. And, I struggle with that because there isn't enough of any of those one things that's going on that I think would sustain my business right now. And the other issue is that when I'm outsourcing, I see all of it. I see all of these things. And it's very, very difficult to walk by something that I know is sellable that is not in my bailiwick, right? That's something outside of the core thing that I've tried to focus on. And it's a very, very challenging to stay laser focused when I'm in an environment where I'm like, okay, this is sellable, but I have to walk on by. Oh, this is really cute. I need to walk on by. And it's very, very difficult. So what I've done right now is I have a section at the Pasadena Antique Mall. I haven't really talked about this, but I will in a future video when I kind of more announce it. But in this space, in this mall, I put everything what I consider as non-designer vintage, right? Super cute, like tulle skirts, funky retro hats, leather vests, 1980s leather jackets, or it might be a Western style shirt from the 70s, lots of like beaded jackets, all of the kinds of really cool pieces that are fun to see and really fun to come across, but they're not designer. It's not museum quality in there, but they're super wearable, super fun, and, people will enjoy them. So that's what I put in there. So in addition to clothes and hats, I have a few handbags. I have like vintage pillows, like a vintage piece of luggage, like some train cases and things like that. And so that's kind of how I dealt with that. I'm like, I find all this stuff. I'm going to try to find an outlet for it, right? So I put it into this antique mall, and things are going well. And it's fascinating to see what sells in an antique mall. It's just fascinating because when I first opened, I didn't have any idea if anyone would buy anything. And if they did, I'm like, well, what are they going to buy? What are they willing to pay? Because all of my things, because I always go for the person is willing to pay a premium. My things were more expensive than anything else in there. So I'm like, I'm really concerned no one's going to buy anything. Well, that wasn't true. The first was a $145 beaded top. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good because the booths across from me, they've got, $4 shirts in there. So I realized that there is a customer out there that's willing to pay a premium for non-designer vintage. And so that is something that I've done, that I'm working with, and I still source new things for that specific customer. I put all of my vintage on Poshmark as well, but in terms of physically being able to see it, I can't get it all in there because my space is large as it is, isn't big enough, but that's where I have it. So when I think about the red carpet, and I have dressed people for a number of red carpets, and each time they've been in this high-end vintage couture that has been photographed and shared on Instagram, and one outfit that I helped put together for someone was in People magazine. So that was a completely different experience. And when I've sourced things like that, I have usually found them in other consignment shops or online. I've not yet come across anything in the Goodwill, except one thing that's, I think one or two things that are like super like incredible that I came across in that environment, but that's really not where I'm going to go for that, right? I'm going to look online. I'm going to go to an estate sales. I'm going to look at other consignment shops where they're going to more likely have something like this. And I'm usually going to be paying a lot more for it. I'm not going to be paying $10 for this kind of dress. I'm going to be paying hundreds of dollars, right? So, and I'm willing to pay and glad to pay hundreds of dollars for something that's worth thousands, right? So that's a completely different experience. And so to find those pieces for the red carpet, I have to go to different places and I have to look for different things and I have to make those, it has to be learned, and I have to learn about what is hot, what are stylists putting on the red carpet and where are they getting this. So like Lady Gaga was just wearing Schiaparelli at the inauguration. She looked amazing, had this ginormous, that's like gigantic, very, very large bird pin on her black and red dress, and it was by Schiaparelli. And, you know, the fact that, one, she looked amazing, but two, that she was willing to wear this vintage really speaks volumes to how stylists are working with these older pieces to get them back out there. And she did a great job. It's, you know, it's a beautiful thing, and I was really, really glad to see it. But that's a very different type of sourcing. It's a different way to market the product. And the thing is, I'm going to come across those pieces. But the thing is, I am looking for them anyway, but I will sometimes come across them in very odd places. Think about what sells on, say, Poshmark and eBay. Poshmark, which is not yet global in terms of being able to transact across country borders. I think when that changes, everything's going to change for the better for Poshmark. But right now we're siloed, so I'm buying trendy clothes to sell in the U.S. to U.S. buyers, right? And my hope is as soon as, I think Canada will be the first border to open up between U.S. and Canada is my assumption. I have nothing else to go on but that. But it's the two most mature markets they've been in, so why wouldn't we? And we're just right there around the corner or across the border. So anyway, you know, because they're not global like eBay, I'm limited to the people in the U.S. So I've been I've sold everything from vintage, very expensive vintage Moschino, Chanel, Donna Karan, things like that. I mostly have sold the super trendy pieces that have a certain look and feel, right? So when I'm sourcing, I'm like, okay, this is good for my Poshmark closet. I'll buy something Zara. I'll buy something Reformation. I'll buy, you know, whatever. And that's something that's going through my head when I'm sourcing is which platform would that be good for? And so when I'm sourcing for, say, eBay, or I say sourcing and then putting it on eBay, rather, is I know that that's a global customer. They don't get to every country in the world, but they get to most. And so I know I have a better chance of reaching a broader audience by putting it there because of the fact that their platform actually sells and transacts across border. So that's a different customer. And then now I've been experimenting with Vestiaire Collective. I've been on there like 2 weeks now. It's a different podcast about how that's going. It's very interesting. It's an international site. And the two sales we've had so far, I think one was international and one was in the U.S., I think. But if it's not, they're both international sales. So what was selling on Vestiaire Collective was fascinating to me, something that I had for a year sitting in my store. Sold in the first day or two on Vestiaire Collective because you have a brand new audience of millions of people that are completely different buyers and sellers than you would have, say, on an eBay or a Poshmark, et cetera. So that was fascinating. So each platform is different. They have a unique audience. For example, when the Emmy Award-winning TV show Schitt's Creek was very vocal about how they sourced all the vintage designer items for their show. And one of the places they went was eBay. And they said, you know, they would wait for months and stock the site for, you know, months at a time trying to find just the right pieces for the characters. And they did that for a very long time. So the whole season was source online and try to find a certain look and feel. They have to come up with that stuff somewhere. So all that to say, oh, and I didn't mention vintage shows. So vintage shows is a different one too. And I've been invited to do a vintage show, and there's one coming up in April, and I'm staring at my inventory, and they're like, oh, it should be bright colors. It should be springy or caftans because it's California. And I came here from the East Coast where everything I have, when I say everything, I'm talking about 90% of what I have is heavy. It's wool, it's velvet, it's lace, it's maxi, it's evening. It's like I don't even have anything that fits that bill. And so I'm a little hesitant to do that vintage show because if I'm going to source for a vintage show, I have to figure out who that audience is and where is that vintage show. And if it's in California, I have to be able to have muumuus and kimonos and sundresses and maxi dresses and flowy things and things for, 100-degree heat. And if someone, say a show in Palm Springs, I've been invited to be one there. If I'm going to show there, I have to have the right clothes for that. And so if I'm outsourcing, then I have to think, okay, who's the audience? Where is this going to be? Is this an online? Is this for a show, et cetera? So all of this to say, lately with all of these different experiences that I have going on and the sourcing that I do, I realize that I'm constantly trying to vet each piece. Who's the audience? What platform can it go on? Can it go on all the platforms? Where is it appropriate? And is it worth buying? And is it something that I even want to continue doing? So, for example, the non-designer vintage, that's something I really want to keep doing. And one of the things that I think I struggle with, as I said earlier, is that if I'm going to be laser focused and I'm only going to do couture vintage and not do regular vintage, that means that when I go into an environment like the Goodwill or Salvation Army, something like that, I'm going to have to be super controlled when I go through and say, okay, I'm only doing designer vintage anymore. As a matter of fact, why am I even in here, right? So that's really the question. If I'm only going to do designer vintage, I wouldn't even go in there because Goodwill sends everything good to their auction. So you're not going to find it in the store unless it's a mistake. So it's going to change where I'm going to spend my time. If I'm only going to sell super trendy pieces, try to find anything couture, then no, I don't need to go to a consignment shop where the price per item is going to be so much higher. Because I've spent $50 on a velvet pair of parachute pants that went to Japan that sold for $700, right? I was happy to pay $50 because I knew what they were, right? And so those are all things to factor in. And so today I've just been sort of struggling with the fact that I had just gotten home from the Goodwill and I have my bag of tricks, and in there are things. I have one, a display table that I bought for the antique mall, which is incredible. It looks like a giant cake stand, but it's actually a table. It's like scalloped and it's silver metal with kind of that distressed glass on it. It's beautiful. But in my bag that I bought of clothes were all Poshmark oriented clothes and then one piece of vintage, non-designer vintage. But if I'm only going to do designer vintage, I shouldn't have bought that piece and I should have left it for someone else who does regular vintage. But I didn't because I'm not quite there yet. See kind of where I'm coming from. So one of the things that I think it's so important to do is think about who is your audience. Are you trying to get a stylist to put a gown on the red carpet? Are you trying to get a costume designer? Are you trying just to sell non-branded vintage at the local flea market? Are you trying to do a vintage show where there's an expectation that everything is not necessarily designer but beautifully presented and in pristine condition? Are you trying to sell for super trendy on Poshmark or to a global audience where, all things are on the table, right? So this is where I am. I want to talk about it tonight. And I think one of the things that I'm going to do is try to get out of the non-designer vintage world. And I think that's the easiest thing to do because it's not something that I'm not really, it's the kind of thing that I've bought it because I found it by accident but wasn't looking for it, and I found that so many times and ended up having a whole bunch of it. So that is something I think that I could easily do, say, okay, if it's not couture, don't buy vintage. And that's easy. It's very specific. Do that. And I know that in that instance, when I can just walk on by and leave it for the next person. I walk on by a lot of things, and I think that's one of the hardest things in reselling is that there's so much out there that you can't handle all of it, and you have to make a decision. You have to specialize, and you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to do? And I also think that part of the reason I've had more success lately than ever before selling on Poshmark is because I've sort of gotten my Poshmark closet down to a very specific kind of piece of clothing, a certain colors, certain look, certain feel, certain style to it. And that is by design. And so if you have a certain color, for example, I have a lot of red, white, and black and gray. So that's very, very specific colors, and silver as well. So that when I buy glassware, vintage glassware, I didn't used to buy it, but I just kept finding it, and I just couldn't help it anymore. And I'm going to put a bunch at the antique mall for the first time. Is all of the glassware is the same color. It's all black, white, red, maybe a pop of blue in there somewhere, but it's all the same color scheme. And that was my way of filtering through the so many pieces that are out there that it would help me make decisions and help me sort through it and come down to something that made sense for me, because I can't buy all the glassware that I've ever seen. I see Wedgwood, I see Royal Dalton, I see super fancy things from Japan. I mean, I have yet to find like the vase that sold for $500,000 that someone found at a Goodwill. And that is definitely a story for another podcast on something that I did found that turned out to be super rare, and what I did about it. But yeah, it's the hunt, it's shopping, it's hunting, it's screening, it's using your eye to go for certain styles, certain colors, a certain customer. And I think the more you can define who you're going after, what that customer likes, then the better. So whether it's by brands, there are brands I won't carry anymore once they sell through. For example, I have some amazing Talbot's velvet blazers in there. I won't buy that brand again. No longer buying Lafayette brand 145 or 148, whatever it is. No longer buying Trina Turk. You know, there's a lot of brands that I just don't want to have anymore because it doesn't fit with the core aesthetic. So I want to be super poppy, edgy, colors like black, red, white, silver. So in order to do that, it makes more sense to buy Alexander McQueen than it would Kate Spade. It makes more sense to have Helmut Lang than to have Jones New York. It makes more sense to have Thierry Mugler than, say, Evan Picone, right? So there's so many ways to differentiate. And I keep honing down closer and closer and closer into what it is that I'm trying to do. And I did learn from my short time so far working with the vintage clothing stores that a lot of the young women that have been in there when I've been in, like working with the inventory and zhuzhing it up or putting in new items in, they're looking for a very specific style. And this I didn't really understand, but this whole 40s look, 50s and 40s look is very popular. And I think it's because it's very feminine style and it's very flattering on a woman. But a lot of people want that look. They want that dress going to like hug their curves a little bit. And those styles do that. They make you look feminine. They make you look like a lady. And that's a style that a lot of people have asked for. I don't have that much of it. I have like a few pieces that would fit the criteria because it's not anything I even thought about. You know, I didn't think about what is that style that people want, right? What is the vintage that's going to attract the buyer? And most of the pieces I bought just because I admired them and I thought that they were still sellable. But if you get into it, You know that there's a lot of people who like, you have anything 40s, you have anything 50s? And I'm like, let me see, right? This is a very specific audience for that. And there's a brand called Stop Staring that does 40s and 50s styles. If you've never checked them out, if you like that, Stop Staring. A lot of stylists use that brand for their clothes, but they're all retro inspired, and they're all look like but they're modern. They're current made with current fabrics and current measurements and things like that, but they're all 40s and 50s silhouettes. And that's really what a lot of people are looking for. So that's something I learned. But all that to say that whether or not you're going for, whether you're going for a costume designer, if you're going for true vintage or just modern, you want to sell Free People, or you want to, resell Rock and Republic. I mean, these are all very specific things that I think it's important to be very purposeful about what you're buying, why you're buying it, who are you trying to sell to, coming up with a theme for your closet, a theme for what you're selling, so that my whole thinking is if whoever likes one thing in my closet should like all of it, right? That's the whole point. So I can get you in on one piece, and I've got 1,800 of them for you to look at while you're there. And that's really what I'm going for. And if you look at any online store or catalog, you'll see there's a look, feel, and theme to what they're doing, how they photograph their items. There's a theme and a feel and a look to everything that they have there for sale. It's the same kind of thing I'm working to achieve with my own store. And yeah, so that was my day, from the red carpet from designer couture to non-label vintage to the Goodwill and everything in between. That was my day. So, yeah, I have a wide variety of experiences, and I love them all. That's the thing. There's something really fantastic about finding something in an environment that it shouldn't be in, like when I was in the Out of the Closet, and I was in there one day. And what I love about that store is that they don't haul a lot of they do. I think they do have auctions, but they don't do it the way the Goodwill does, where everything good never comes in the store. That's why you can always find something in there that's amazing, because they're not trying to put it on auction. I found this beautiful silk maxi dress in there, new with tags, and I took it by Rachel Zoe, and I looked it up on my phone, and it was some, I don't know, $600, $700 dress that was in there for $15, and I bought it. And I'm like, I don't know why it's in here, but I am absolutely going to give it a new home. And it sold very quickly, by the way. And I know it's under price. I know I'll make money on it. And this is my customer. My customer will buy this. And they did. They bought it very quickly. So, yeah, it's always exciting and interesting to find things in odd places like that. When I have found things at the Goodwill bins that shouldn't be there. John Barbados shoes, and I have found, I found a Louis Vuitton. I found two pieces of Louis Vuitton at the Goodwill at the bins that were their uniforms. It says Louis Vuitton uniforms on it, just in with all this stuff. And you're just like, what? I found a Balmain men's tie, just, Balenciaga, not Balmain. And so, like, that's just thrilling. Like, what is it doing there? I don't know what it's doing there, but I'm going to rescue it from that environment, clean it up, and put it back out into the world. And it's fun. It's fun to do it. I love it. I love every bit of it. But I am these days a lot more conscious about what I'm buying, who's the audience, what's the purpose, and getting really focused. And that said, I'm pretty sure I'm out of the non-designer vintage market. So if you need any, I'll give you a good deal in the closet or at the Pasadena Antique Ball. Definitely check it out. So that's it. I'm just getting more focused, and hopefully you have your own way of getting focused about what you're doing, because I really don't think throwing darts at a dartboard is the way to go about it. I think having a theme, having something that you specialize in, because there's so much out there, and you've got to find a way to make sense of it all. And it also is very helpful if you know you're looking for certain colors or certain styles when you go through something, or even certain brands when you go through. It's going to make your life a lot easier. And that's it. This is Jennie Walker with Closet Conversations. If you'd like to be in touch with me, I am on Instagram at JennieGirl's Closet. You can just message me there. If you like what you've heard today, please subscribe to this podcast. I'd love a 5-star review, and always leave some comments. Always love hearing from people. If you have show ideas, anything like that, it'd be great to hear from you. And I look forward to having you with me on a future episode.
Introducing Peacock, the new free streaming service from NBC Universal. It's hit movies, current shows, live sports, trending bits, and timeless hits. And that's why you can't not watch. Peacock. Watch for free. Upgrade for more. Stream now at peacocktv.com. Law & Order SVU streaming now.
Drivers, start your engines. The Honda Dream Garage Spring Event, where every vehicle is inspired by Honda's racing spirit, is on now. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get 1.9% APR on the 2021 Honda Civic Sedan or redesigned Accord.
See dealer for financing details.